the Thriving Through podcast. Today, we're exploring how a well-structured process framework can transform not just large corporations, but solo consulting practices as well. My guest, Michael Schank, left the corporate world to evangelize his process-focused transformation methodology, and he's going to share his journey from established corporate consultant to self-employed entrepreneur. If you've ever struggled with the chaotic business transformations or inconsistent marketing results, you'll want to hear Michael's fresh approach to bringing order to complexity. Let's dive right in. Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Through podcast. Today, my guest is Michael Schank, and I'm going to pass the microphone over to Michael. Michael, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I have my own consulting company called Process Inventory Advisors. It's based on my book, which is in the background, called Digital Transformation Success. And just real brief, it puts the power of process in how an organization transforms and manages their business performance.
I love that. So it puts the power of process, power of process, and then as a tool for transforming the organization.
Exactly.
Define process.
So, real quick, I think what organizations lack is an understanding of what they do at a detailed and a macro level. So what my framework does, it's all about just detailing every single process that your business does. And it starts with an interview process. So go to the top of the organization and just ask those executives what their organization does. And then you go down to their leaders and you go down to their leaders until you capture every single process that they do. Where it's impactful for transformation and organizational performance is it gives you a common language. So once you have that common language, now I could do strategy, determining what areas of my businesses are strong, weak, where there's opportunities and threats, and I could define where I put my investment dollars in a very objective way into how I change. But then it could provide alignment from the strategy leaders down to those on the ground, those that are doing scoping projects, creating requirements, doing design, doing testing, etc. It can help with risk and compliance and understanding where you have challenges that you have to control for, and how you provide regulators with reports that are accurate and provide senior leaders with reports on your risk environment. It could help you identify where there's waste and inefficiencies in your organization in terms of overlaps, in terms of redundancies, maybe roles that just aren't as important that you could repurpose people. And last, I think it's the key to integrating AI into how you manage your business. So there was a report I recently read through that said a plurality of respondents really want to see AI deeply embed into their processes and functions. Well, you can't do that unless you know what your processes are.
Good point. And as you were talking, I was thinking that even a self-employed consultant who has a very small business,
Yes.
understanding our processes is critical and often not done because we just go through our day.
Yes.
But it is critical. And I've been actually thinking about this recently, that turning the marketing of your business into a predictable process is important if you want to have consistent success, if you want to generate leads and convert into clients consistently. So I really get what you're talking about the process here.
Yes.
So how long have you been doing this?
So I published my book in December of 23, and then so I'd say January of 24 is when I really got started. And
Okay.
and I was I worked for big corporate companies before that, so it's my first venture into entrepreneurism. So somewhat drinking by the fire hose, somewhat kind of feeling my way around in the dark, and a lot of trial and error.
Okay. So you set out to write the book with the plan that you were going to then open your business sort of with the book as the foundation or as the credibility?
Exactly. And it started, I didn't write the book to necessarily create a business. A little bit of my background. So I was in consulting for most of my career. So big consulting firms, Accenture for 13 years, EY at 10, spent some time in large banks. And the one good thing about being a consultant in large consulting firms is you get a lot of exposure to a lot of different types of businesses. So I've probably been in 100 or so large banks, insurance companies, wealth management. And I was helping them deal with problems such as everything under the transformation sun. So defining strategy, designing your IT architecture, running transformation programs, looking for inefficiencies, doing risk and compliance. And what I found was that you see certain patterns of where organizations fail. And a lot of it is the root cause in my mind is organizations are just so complex. If you think about the people, process, technology environment, and that nobody has a grasp of everything that's going on within the organization. They really just know what their scope of work is, but then they're understanding lessons as things get further out in the periphery. So that's where I developed my framework, and I think it's really the solution. So I wrote the book more as a passion project. I was at Citibank. I left there and I said, I really need to get this on paper. But then once I had the book, I'm like, well, I'm going to leverage it for credibility and see how I do kind of doing consulting on my own.
Okay. You have, so you have many years of experience with what I would call the craft of consulting,
Yes.
being a consultant.
Mhm.
I would guess that didn't have as much, you didn't have a whole lot to do with the marketing of the firm's consulting services.
Not
Is that
marketing,
correct or not?
not
Okay.
marketing, but I do, as a consultant, especially at the senior ranks, you do have expectations on certain sales and delivery.
Mhm.
So, obviously there's broader marketing that you'll see in airports and ads and whatnot. I had nothing to do with that. But marketing takes many forms, and I did have to build a network of clients. I did have to create proposals. I did have to go in what they called orals, where you explain your proposals and field any questions or whatnot. So, yeah, I think that's a form of marketing. It's a form of sales. I think probably a gray line in some ways.
Well, sales and marketing are
Yeah,
sort of flip sides. So you were had to be a rainmaker in
had to
your
be a
roles
rainmaker.
in your as a senior level. Yeah. And
Exactly.
which is really what we're doing as self-employed consultants.
Yes.
When you became an independent self-employed consultant, it probably wasn't as hard for you to be able to translate your rainmaking experience, or was it? How different has it been
So
to
it's yeah.
find
Um,
clients?
So it's a lot different in that I don't have the same infrastructure as large consulting. So in consulting, you have account teams, people that are dedicated to a specific client, and they have to have their ear on the ground, they have to know the pulse of the client, what keeps them up at night. And they could bring in someone like me who's got a very specialized service to sell to them. I don't have that. So as an independent person, and I don't have a large marketing budget. Um, so it's been a challenge for sure to get doors opened and get in some of the conversations. The and I deal with too a lot of skepticism and really I'm hunting whales if you really think about it. My target clients are COOs, CIOs, those types, and a lot of people in corporate America, a lot of people in general are married to their current concepts or their way of doing things. So I've got to break through and say, hey, I've got something different and we'll solve your problems.
Right. And having written the book on it probably helps. But how do you overcome that skepticism and help them to understand that they have a problem?
So, first is just I've been doing a lot of promotions on the concept. So, I've written articles, I've done a lot of podcasts, I've done speaking engagements, you name it, anything to get the word out and build a community of people that that really buy into this concept. Obviously, the book and people read the book. Um, and it's just and first to sell to someone, it's like AA. The first step is you have to admit you have a problem. So it's really hard to sell to somebody who doesn't think they have a problem. But once they have some level of acceptance of that, it's just selling them that, hey, there's a different approach. You don't have to struggle with the current ways of doing things. And there's a ubiquitous stat that I always use that 70% of transformation efforts fail, and it's due to that chaos and complexity that I mentioned. So it's really connecting the dots from their logical point of view that, look, I can solve your chaos by mapping everything out. And it's not just mapping out processes, but it's mapping out all the resources. Where does what technology supports your processes, what people support your processes, what risks and compliance needs do you have, really mapping out the entire organization to give them clarity and precision of what they really need to change.
Okay. How do you pinpoint, or how would you define the problems that you're looking to solve for your clients? I mean, what is keeping them up at night?
Um, so in a macro view, the world is changing, obviously. You don't only have to scan the headlines to see what's going on, but it's not only say trade, but the technology environment, and everyone's talking about AI and how they use it. The competitive landscape is changing. Regulators, especially in the industries that I'm historically been in with risk and compliance, they send out a lot of fines and a lot of consent orders. So they ultimately are looking for, how do I be more efficient with my dollars? How do I be more effective for my customers? It's a struggle that every organization goes through, but in this environment, I think it's becoming more acute.
Okay. Who you said you meant you look for COOs and CIOs.
Yep.
What else? How else would you define your target, your ideal client?
Yeah, when I started this, I created a full business plan. And I think I laid out like 7 or 8 personas. So it's
Mhm.
the COO, and their main point is, how do I be more efficient? How do I be more effective? How do I drive higher quality? It's the CIO, so how do I use my technology most efficiently so that it's aligned to what my business needs, and I could change in an agile way to meet their needs. It's the head of transformation. So a lot of organizations will hire someone just to drive their transformation program. So it's working with them. It's there's a lot of organizations have established process teams. So and I think a lot of, from what I've seen, those teams typically struggle for lack of a vision for what they're doing and connecting to the needs of the business. I'm sure I'm missing some, but there's a lot of those different roles, and what I always try and do is craft what my story that I tell to them specifically, so that I could answer that question that keeps them up at night.
Okay. That's even though you're targeting, certain the upper level C-suite, a couple of those positions, 7 personas is still a lot. Are you finding that your clients are coming out of, is there one or are there one or two particular areas, personas that are turning out to be the client, your good clients, your high paying clients?
Yeah, I think it's in the transformation. So I had one of my clients that is they're going through a full technology replacement. So replacing their ERP core data systems a lot. And that is a massive undertaking for an established business that has, billions in revenue. So it's those types that I really like to work with, which is helping them understand, or like really decomplexify, if that's a word, their understanding of their business, so that they could be a lot more precise with it. Yeah.
So that's what lights you up, working
That's
with that.
that's what yeah. Well, this
Okay.
whole this whole concept. I mean, I consider myself not only an entrepreneur, an author, and a bunch of other titles, but really an evangelist for this concept.
Love it. Well, that you have done a couple things that a lot of self-employed consultants didn't do at the beginning, is that you have a very specific process. You have a book, and a very specific process or framework that you're evangelizing for. So when when your potential clients are looking at different consultants, you already are differentiated. And
That's right.
that's a big thing. That's an important thing. That's something that I tell my clients they need to do. So you've got, you're doing a lot of things right with already with differentiating. Let
Exactly.
me ask, let me ask you another question, or actually, were you going to say something there? Did
No,
I
I was
interrupt you?
just going to add to that point. I tell people all the time, like, don't hire the consulting brand. You're ultimately hiring the people. So the engagement partner, the team, and I think the onus is on the company that's hiring them. Make sure that they have a good approach. Make sure they know what they're talking about. They have relevant experience. And I think I bring all of that, and and differentiate myself through the book and through the concept.
Okay. Tell us a story or two about the biggest challenges you faced so far in building your practice and how you've overcome them.
I don't know about overcoming them.
How you are overcoming them in present tense
Yeah.
then.
So the first is building the pipeline. So as a small business that's bootstrapped, I don't have a lot of marketing budget. I can't hire people to do outreach. I will say one of the big challenges is when you start a company, I get probably 4 or 5 messages a day on people marketing services to me. Oh, we could help you market. We could
Mhm.
help you create YouTube videos. We could help you do X, Y, and Z. And you really just have to filter that out. And I've worked with some marketing companies that have not really produced results. So sorry. I think you really need to do your own homework and research on what business are you selling, who are you marketing to, and what is the right marketing strategy. And there's a lot of in digital marketing, by the way, I knew nothing about before this. I've learned a little. I would not say I'm an expert, but I would say there's a lot of marketing that I don't think is appropriate for me, and it's just not worth spending any time on. So I think that's the biggest thing is marketing, and then just being very judicious on who you give your time to and people that are trying to sell you services.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Because you're active on LinkedIn. So you do get we can help you.
We could help you. Do you want more? You want 30 clients a month for whatever? I'm like, "You go away."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what's the biggest surprise or challenge that you've found as you've transitioned from corporate consulting at these big consulting companies to being self-employed?
So the as being bootstrapped, I don't have a team to do things for me. So there's a practical capacity issue in terms of creating content, in terms of like there's a lot of things I would love to do.
Mhm.
I mentioned AI. One things that I would love to do and I'm passionate about is there's this concept called digital twin, where you construct using my framework a model of your organization and then you educate AI and everything so that now AI is looking at every metric and giving you insights in terms of how things are doing. Be great to build a prototype and push that out there, but I just don't have the funding and the capacity and probably some level of technical knowledge to do that. So that is definitely a challenge. I think there's other mechanics of running a business that I just didn't think about, like business insurance, bookkeeping, and well, I'll say QuickBooks is like the bane of my existence. I think that platform is designed to confuse people. Um,
That's what I've heard. I've
I,
heard that.
I don't, if that was their intention, I don't think they could have done a better job. So uh, yeah. So there's mechanical things like that are just so painful and take up more time
Right.
than I had anticipated.
That you didn't have to deal with when you were at a big company
E-
because they had a department to take care of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like just a case in point, I hired an employee and I had to find the W-2 for and I couldn't find it. I had to get on help to say, how do I find this stupid thing?
Oh, that's not a well-designed IRS website. They make
Well,
it too hard to find the W-2.
maybe if they're, maybe they designed it for security. So if I can't find it, how can a hacker find it?
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah,
So you are a one-man show.
one man show.
And when we had our pre-interview, you mentioned that you bring on people as needed.
Yes.
Could you share your approach for building a network of collaborators and how you manage your client expectations about your team size?
So the network of collaborators is just really from, I've worked with a lot of people in my consulting space that I know that I could reach out with. I have built a community through LinkedIn for my active posting. So I do have a list of people that I could call on. And I do have some other connectors that I could call that can put me in touch with other people. So that's typically not a problem. In terms of the team size, so when I create a proposal for a client, you have to lay out what's the timeline, what's the deliverables, what are they going to expect, et cetera. As part of that too is team size, and skill sets and everything. So I'm in control of what I'm proposing to a customer. If somebody said, "Hey, I need 30 people," I would probably struggle with that at least initially. Maybe ramp up to that over time. But if it's one or two, I've no problems finding the people. Obviously, it's not just finding the people, but I have to do a solid amount of screening to make sure that they're the right fit, they're the right customer service, I guess, or consulting mentality, that I could put them in front of a client. So there's a lot of factors in that. So far,
A lot.
my projects have been small, so it hasn't really been a challenge. I hope one day to ramp up though.
Let's talk about that. Where do you see your consulting business in 3 to 5 years?
Ultimately, my my driver, my purpose is not necessarily to make money. Now, I do want to make money. I think there's value for the services I provide, but ultimately, I would love this to become the industry standard. Um, where people say, I'm doing a transformation, I need to create my process inventory. That is my dream. So in addition to the promotion, another thing that I'm doing is building a lot of partnerships with other companies that I think can help me, and I could help them. One probably three buckets of it is, or maybe two, but one is, there's a lot of software out there to do process modeling, and it's a fairly mature market. They sell their services though based on features and functions. Here's how you create a process flow. Here's how you line data, et cetera. And my pitch to them is, you're like this guitar in the background, which is a beautiful tool and could create the most amazing music, but only if you know how to use it. And I think a lot of their customers buy the platform for whatever need, but they struggle in how to make use of it, and how to
Mhm.
connect it to the larger purpose that they're trying to drive, whether it's transformation or whatnot. And that's where I could fill the gap. So I'm trying to build partnerships where I could do kind of brand advocacy, some marketing, and then ultimately professional services. So help them kind of build a pipeline for them, for myself. There's automation companies that really struggle with how do you do proper discovery so you're selecting the right processes to automate, and you could collect some knowledge about those. And then I'd say the last category is just technology companies. So I'm in discussions with one large software company, and they've built some process assets to help their customers implement. And really, their goal is to get accelerated time to value. So I'm hoping this partnership that they adopt my framework, and advise clients to use this approach when implementing their software.
That's,
Yeah.
that's a very, very aspirational, very far reaching. I love it. I love your
I
vision.
just I just want to change the world. Is that too
Uh,
much to
That's
ask?
simple. So you are. selling complex transformation services to large organizations.
Yes.
Given the large, I assume there are longer sales cycles and multiple stakeholders. How are you navigating that whole process of selling those services?
Yeah. First is you just
In
got, yeah. I mean, it does take a while. I'm in discussion with one that's probably been 5 or 6 months, and I don't know, he's not the ultimate decision maker, he's an influencer, so, maybe it'll come to fruition or maybe not. The first step is you need to get in their consciousness, that they know who you are, that you can have a discussion, that you even have a platform to tell the story about what this thing does. But then ultimately, there's got to be an intersection of the opportunity, the timing, the budget, like everything has to come together and say, yeah, we want to hire you. And as I mentioned, I'm selling to whales. So I know a lot of small business owners sell maybe coaching services to individuals, and that's a lot easier. But when you're selling to corporation, and it could be a small business too, medium-sized business, I think it really translates to everyone. But all those factors have to align. So there's got to be a good amount of patience.
what specific marketing approaches have worked so far?
My promotions have got me a lot of discussions. I will say this, and it's the inverse of your question, but what hasn't worked is probably the better
Okay.
answer. Any kind of blast marketing. I haven't done a lot of it, but I did pay a company to do some strategy for me, and I walked away from it kind of mid contract because I'm like, this is not for me. I don't think this is going to work, and it would have been a large investment, and I just didn't see a lot of it. I have hired some marketing outreach firms to do direct outreach to people with COO titles, CIO titles, etc. I've not gotten any business from that. So I think when this current one ends, I'm going to walk away from it. So it's a struggle. I think what has worked best for me is going to conferences and meeting people and having that personal one-on-one discussion and my network. So people that I know that I could reach out to that are in some kind of decision making or influencing role that understands the concept, that wants to do this work and can bring me in. And I really think the partnerships with some of these other companies, I'm hoping bears some fruit. It hasn't yet, but I'm putting a lot of trust and faith in it.
Okay. So conferences, your partnerships and conferences and networking at conferences.
Exactly. And my personal network from previous experiences.
Okay. When we talked earlier, you observed that your content tends to attract engagement from the practitioners, but not necessarily from the buyers.
Yes.
So how are you adapting your messaging or approach to reach decision makers?
That's a good question. So I've really got to, obviously, you've got to speak to what drives them, and a lot of my content is very focused on the practice of process management, which a decision maker doesn't care about. They just care about, I need to hit my budget, I need to hit my timeline, I need to deliver the functionality that I'm promising to my stakeholders, et cetera. So I'm starting to rethink what I'm posting and what I'm writing about. But it's tough. I think everyone's inundated with messages, so it's probably the struggle is real. How do you get in front of them with the right message that meets them where they're at right at that moment?
You nailed it. Yep.
Yeah.
So how do you split your time between running the business, sort of being a business owner, client work, and sales and marketing?
That's an excellent question because I think that percentage will change on a day-to-day basis. But well, first and foremost, my client work. I never want to sell someone short. I always want to walk away from an engagement with them being satisfied with what they received. So, that's got to take first and foremost priority is, because ultimately it's all about reputation. So I've got to put the right energies into that. Um, the promotion, I kind of have a consistent schedule now where I post, and I've built a backlog of topics that I'm going to post about. But then I'm always opportunistic. And then sales and marketing, it's got to be your lifeblood. So obviously this thing doesn't continue unless I continue to attract clients and build this pipeline of revenue. So probably not a clean answer, but I think it's all contextual to the moment.
Okay, yeah, good. Is Speaking of revenue, is your business spinning off the kind of revenue that you expected you would be getting at this point in time?
To be honest, no. I'm not at replacement rate with even my salary from corporate America. So um, I'm drawing on some personal funds to do this. Uh, so there's some that gives me some focus, obviously, to do the marketing and the selling and just continue to push the message out. And hey,
Okay,
maybe at some point this won't work and I go back to corporate America. And if that is the case, I'll be confident that I've done everything that I could, and you know it just didn't work.
okay. Last question.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for other self-employed consultants?
So I think the business plan is real, and it's not just putting something on paper, but just really thinking about every different aspect of this. What are your services? Who are your target personas? How are you going to market this thing? What are your projections year over year for revenue and growth, and make sure that you have a solid plan for it. Because and as Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. It will change, or I could do the impersonation. I only have a plan until I get punched in the mouth. Um, but at just least have that solid understanding of what you're doing, and really think through it before you take the leap.
Okay, so have a roadmap.
Have a roadmap.
Yes, yes. How complex was your business plan?
It was pretty complex. I mean, not so complex. It was probably about 10 or 12 pages or so. Um,
Hmm.
some things I focused on, some things I haven't. I haven't revisited it in a while, so if I would update it based on my learnings. Um, but it laid out very, very clearly what I expected to do. So,
Okay, great. Well, that wraps up our interview. Thank you so much for being a guest today. What a fascinating conversation with Michael Schank about the power of process in transformation. The key takeaway I want you to remember is that whether you're running a massive corporation transformation, that's a mouthful, or a solo consulting practice, having a detailed understanding of your processes provides the clarity and the precision needed for success. In fact, Michael mentioned that 70% of transformation efforts fail due to chaos and complexity, something his framework addresses directly. If you're inspired by Michael's approach, I encourage you to examine your own business. What processes are critical to your success? How well do you understand them? Could mapping out your activities and processes bring more consistency to your results? I know they have to mine. If you liked today's episode, click subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to make sure you don't miss any future episodes, and leave me a review so other self-employed consultants can learn about the podcast. Until next time, keep thriving through.